Racist police tried to harass a millionaire and his black wife with their 5-year-old triplets on the highway, but a single phone call from him turned fear into silence instantly. But before we dive into the full story, let me know where you're watching from and what time it is. Now subscribe to the channel, and let's get started. Boston, February 2008. Snow fell relentlessly over the streets of Beacon Hill, coating the elegant brownstones with a pristine white blanket that seemed to emphasize their timeless grandeur. Alicia Jackson pulled her worn wool coat tighter around her slender frame as she navigated the slippery sidewalks, trying to appear as though she belonged among the confident executives who brushed past her with purposeful strides. At 25, Alicia was acutely aware of how out of place she looked. Her sensible boots, purchased on clearance 3 winters ago, left damp footprints on the polished marble floor of the Thompson Holdings lobby. The receptionist glanced up, her perfectly arched eyebrow rising slightly as she assessed Alicia's appearance. "I have an appointment with Michael Thompson," Alicia said, her voice steadier than she felt. "Alicia Jackson." The receptionist's expression remained professionally neutral as she picked up the phone. "Mr. Thompson, your 3 o'clock is here." A brief pause. "Yes, sir. Right away." 15th floor. End of the hall, she instructed, handing Alicia a visitor's badge. "Mr. Thompson's assistant will meet you at the elevator." As the elevator ascended, Alicia's reflection in the polished doors revealed a young woman with intelligent eyes and a determined set to her jaw. Her hands, however, betrayed her nervousness as they fidgeted with the strap of her purse, the only accessory she owned that looked expensive, a splurge from her first paycheck as an administrative assistant. The elevator doors opened to reveal a corridor lined with portraits of Thompson men, 3 generations of them staring down with the same steel-blue eyes that had captivated Alicia the first time she'd met Michael at a charity fundraiser where she'd been working as a server. She remembered how he'd sought her out afterward, charmed by what he'd called her refreshing authenticity. Michael's assistant, a glacial blonde in a perfectly tailored suit, greeted Alicia with professional detachment. "Mr. Thompson will see you now," she said, leading her to an imposing mahogany door. The office beyond was everything Alicia had imagined during the 11 months of their clandestine relationship. Floor-to-ceiling windows offered a commanding view of Boston's skyline. The furniture was clearly antique, each piece worth more than her annual salary. The man standing behind the desk, however, was not the Michael she knew, the one who had whispered promises against her skin in the privacy of her tiny Roxbury apartment. This Michael Thompson, heir to billions and aspiring politician, wore an impeccably tailored Armani suit and the expression that made the February wind outside seem warm by comparison. At 32, he carried himself with the confidence of someone who had never heard the word no. "Alicia," he said, not moving to greet her, his voice as impersonal as if addressing one of his employees. "Please, have a seat." She sat in the leather chair across from his desk, the width of polished mahogany between them feeling like an unbridgeable chasm. Outside, snowflakes swirled against the darkening sky, the wind howling faintly against the windows. "Thank you for seeing me," Alicia began, her heart pounding so hard she was certain he could hear it. "I wouldn't have asked if it wasn't important." Michael adjusted his silk tie, his eyes coolly assessing her. "I assume this is about the recommendation letter for your master's program? I've had my assistant draft something suitable." Alicia shook her head, gathering every ounce of courage she possessed. "No, it's not about that." She took a deep breath. "I'm pregnant, Michael. 3 months." The ticking of the antique wall clock suddenly seemed deafening in the silence that followed. Michael's expression didn't change, but his fingers tightened almost imperceptibly on the edge of his desk. "I see," he finally said, his voice devoid of any emotion. He stood and walked to the window, looking out at the city as if seeking answers in the snow-covered landscape. "And you expect what exactly? That I'll ruin my political future because of a lapse in judgment?" The coldness in his voice made Alicia shiver more than the winter chill. "I'm not asking for anything beyond responsibility. It's your child, too." Michael turned, a disdainful smile playing on his lips. "A black girl from Roxbury will never be suitable for Boston society." He stated it as if reciting an irrefutable fact. "You would be a burden to my family and political career." Alicia felt as if she'd been slapped. "Is that all I was to you? A burden? A mistake?" Without answering, Michael returned to his desk and opened a drawer, pulling out his checkbook. "This should resolve the issue. Use it however you see fit. Abortion, expenses, whatever." He scribbled an amount, tore out the check, and slid it across the glass desktop. "But our relationship ends here." Alicia stared at the check as if it were poison. "I don't want your money." "Be reasonable, Alicia." His tone was that of someone explaining a simple concept to a child. "We both know this was never going to last." "I thought you loved me," she said quietly, hating the tremor in her voice. Michael laughed, the sound cutting through her like a blade. "Love?" He shook his head, turning again to look at Boston's skyline. "You were a distraction, Alicia. Interesting, exotic even, but clearly not Thompson material. You were never enough." The casual cruelty of his words robbed her of breath. "And if I refused to disappear?" Michael's eyes hardened. "No Thompson will ever acknowledge mixed-race offspring. Disappear from my life as if we never met. My lawyers will contact you if you decide to make any noise about this." Alicia stood, legs trembling but spine straight. "How could I have been so blind? I thought you were different." "Different from what?" "My family has maintained its position for generations by making practical decisions." He gestured to the portraits on the wall. "I have responsibilities beyond momentary pleasures." She left without taking the check, her dignity the only thing she carried out of the Thompson Holdings building. The snow had intensified, but Alicia barely noticed as she made her way to the subway station, tears freezing on her cheeks. That night, in her cramped third-floor walk-up apartment in Roxbury, Alicia cried until no more tears would come. The space that had once felt cozy when Michael visited now seemed suffocating in its smallness. The peeling paint and second-hand furniture stood in stark contrast to the luxury she'd witnessed hours earlier. The next morning, her roommate Rachel was waiting in their tiny kitchen, concern etched on her face. "How did it go with Mr. Perfect?" Alicia's swollen eyes told the story before she could speak. "He offered me a check to resolve the issue." Rachel's expression hardened. "That bastard. What are you going to do?" "Keep the baby, raise it myself." Later that week, Rachel moved out, leaving a note explaining she couldn't afford to cover for someone who wouldn't be able to pay their share of rent. Alicia was left with double the rent and a growing sense of panic. 2 weeks later, her supervisor at the insurance company where she worked as an administrative assistant called her into his office. His discomfort was obvious as he slid a termination letter across the desk. "Your condition doesn't align with the company image we're trying to project to clients." Discrimination was clear, but Alicia knew she lacked the resources to fight it. She cleared out her desk that afternoon, avoiding the pitying glances of co-workers who had once been friendly. By the end of her first trimester, Alicia had pieced together a survival plan. During the day, she cleaned tables at Quincy Market, ignoring the ache in her back and the occasional comments from tourists about irresponsibility. At night, she worked as a telemarketing operator, her perfectly modulated voice selling magazine subscriptions until midnight. It was during a routine checkup at the community health center, the only medical care she could afford, that Alicia received another shock. "Triplets," announced the doctor, moving the ultrasound wand across Alicia's growing belly. "You're carrying 3 babies." Alicia stared at the monitor in disbelief. 3? "Yes, and they all appear healthy. But you'll need to consider bed rest in your 3rd trimester." "I can't stop working, doctor," Alicia replied, mentally calculating how she would survive the next month. "There's no one to support us." By her 6th month of pregnancy, with her belly now prominently displaying the triplets, Alicia received an eviction notice for late rent payments. The landlord's sympathy extended only to giving her an extra week to vacate. That night, sitting on a bench at Boston Common because she couldn't face her empty apartment, Alicia made a call to a women's shelter in Dorchester. The intake coordinator's voice was kind but clinical as she confirmed a bed would be available the following day. The shelter was clean but institutional, with thin walls that did little to muffle the sounds of other women's troubles. Alicia was assigned to a room with 2 other pregnant women, both teenagers with their own stories of abandonment. Sitting on the narrow single bed, her possessions reduced to what fit in one suitcase, Alicia placed both hands on her enormous belly. "You won't grow up like this," she promised. "One day, we'll be the ones looking down on the Thompsons of this world." Determination replaced despair as Alicia began spending every free moment at the public library. Technology, business, programming. She absorbed everything like a sponge, teaching herself coding basics on the library's computers. It was there she met Diane Wu, a retired librarian who noticed Alicia's dedication. After weeks of friendly conversations over returned books, Diane approached Alicia with an unexpected offer. "I have a spare room in my house in Somerville," she said. "It's small, but it would be better than the shelter for you and the babies." Alicia's pride warred with practicality. "I can't accept charity." "It's not charity," Diane insisted. "It's one woman helping another. My children are grown and gone. My house is too quiet." 2 days later, Alicia moved into Diane's modest Cape Cod home. For the first time in months, she slept through the night, feeling safe. When her contractions started in August, Diane drove her to Massachusetts General Hospital. In the delivery room, surrounded by medical staff prepared for a high-risk birth, Alicia fought through 20 hours of labor before her 3 perfect babies entered the world. Looking into their tiny faces, Marcus, Malik, and Maya, Alicia made a solemn vow. "You will never know what rejection feels like. And one day, we'll show the world he was wrong about us. About everything." As she cradled her newborns in the hospital room, Alicia couldn't imagine that 15 years later, she would be standing on the main stage of the world's largest technology conference, with Michael Thompson watching from the back rows. As Alicia cradled her newborns in the hospital room, the enormity of her responsibility settled over her like a weighted blanket. 3 tiny faces, each perfect in their own way, looked up at her with unfocused eyes. The hospital's harsh fluorescent lights cast shadows under her eyes, evidence of the 20-hour labor she had endured. Outside, August heat shimmered over Boston, a stark contrast to the air-conditioned sterility of Massachusetts General Hospital. "They're beautiful," whispered Diane Wu, who hadn't left her side since the first contraction. The retired librarian's eyes glistened with tears as she gently touched Maya's miniature hand. "Perfect little fighters, just like their mother." Alicia's throat tightened. "I have no idea how I'm going to do this," she admitted, her voice barely audible. "One day at a time," Diane said simply. "That's how everyone does it." 3 days later, Alicia was discharged with strict instructions for the care of her premature but healthy triplets. The nurse reviewing the paperwork paused, pen hovering over the line for father's name. "Should I leave this blank?" she asked, her tone carefully neutral. Alicia straightened her shoulders. "Yes, they have a mother. That's enough." The modest Cape Cod house in Somerville became a battlefield of sleepless nights and endless feedings. Alicia transformed Diane's small living room into an improvised nursery, with 3 second-hand bassinets arranged in a semicircle. The coffee table became a changing station, covered with a waterproof pad and stacked with diapers purchased with WIC vouchers. That first night home, the reality of triplets hit with the force of a hurricane. Marcus started crying at 11, triggering Malik, who woke Maya. By midnight, all 3 were wailing in disharmonious chorus, while Alicia, still recovering from her C-section, moved between bassinets with increasing desperation. "I can't do this," she sobbed when Diane appeared in the doorway, her gray hair disheveled from sleep. "They won't stop crying. I've fed them, changed them, everything." Diane, with the calm of someone who had raised 4 children of her own, took Maya from Alicia's trembling arms. "Go sit down before you fall down," she ordered gently. "You're no good to them, exhausted and in pain." Over the next weeks, Diane became Alicia's lifeline, teaching her the survival skills no parenting book could adequately convey. The older woman showed her how to bathe 3 squirming infants efficiently, how to recognize different cries, and, most crucially, how to feed all 3 simultaneously using a specialized nursing pillow she found at a consignment shop. "You are stronger than you know," Diane told her one afternoon, watching Alicia manage the triple feeding with newfound confidence. "Most women would have crumbled under half of what you've endured." By the time the triplets reached 6 months, Alicia had developed a military-grade precision to her days. She slept in fragmented 3-hour blocks, studied programming language tutorials during feedings, and applied for jobs and educational opportunities during the baby's rare synchronized naps. Her once soft body had transformed, leaner, harder, perpetually tired but driven by a determination that burned brighter than her exhaustion. It was during one of these study sessions, with Malik asleep in her lap and programming books spread across the kitchen table, that Alicia found the advertisement for the MIT scholarship program specifically designed for single mothers with potential in STEM fields. "I should apply," she told Diane, who was gently rocking Marcus. "The chances are minuscule, but—" "Apply," Diane interrupted firmly. "You're exactly who they're looking for." 2 weeks later, Alicia sat in a sterile interview room on the MIT campus, wearing the only professional outfit she owned, a navy blue dress purchased from a thrift store and carefully tailored to hide the fact that she was still nursing. Across from her, 3 professors regarded her with expressions ranging from skepticism to curiosity. "Ms. Jackson," began the oldest of the 3, a woman with steel gray hair and piercing eyes, "your academic background is impressive, but there's an obvious concern." She glanced down at Alicia's application. "How do you plan to study full-time while raising triplet infants alone?" Alicia had anticipated this question. She met the woman's gaze directly. "The same way I've done everything else so far, one day at a time, without giving up." She outlined her plan. Morning classes while Diane watched the babies, remote work in the afternoons with the triplets napping beside her, studying late into the night after they went to sleep. As she spoke, she saw the skepticism in their eyes gradually shift to something like respect. "That's an extremely demanding schedule," said the youngest professor, a man who looked barely older than Alicia herself. "Most students without children struggle with our course load." "With all due respect," Alicia replied, "most students haven't had to fight as hard as I have just to be sitting in this room." 3 weeks later, when the thick acceptance letter arrived with its offer of a full scholarship, Alicia sank to the floor of Diane's hallway, the paper clutched to her chest. The triplets, now crawling and babbling, converged on her like tiny magnets, sensing her emotion. "We did it," she whispered to them, gathering all 3 in her arms despite their squirming. "This is just the beginning." The transition to student life was brutal. Alicia's days began at 4 in the morning with feeding and preparation, followed by a crowded bus ride to campus with her books balanced on her knee. She stood out among the fresh-faced undergraduates and intense graduate students, always slightly disheveled, perpetually armed with travel mugs of coffee, racing between classes with the desperate efficiency of someone who knew that every minute wasted was a minute stolen from either her children or her studies. Her first computer science professor raised an eyebrow when she arrived with spit-up barely concealed on her shoulder. "Rough morning, Ms. Jackson?" "Every morning is rough, Professor," she replied with a tired smile, "but I'm here." After that, he made a point of having freshly brewed coffee waiting when she arrived for his 8 a.m. class. Alicia's first freelance programming job came through a teaching assistant who had been impressed by her tenacity. It was basic website maintenance, mindless work that paid barely above minimum wage, but it was something she could do from Diane's kitchen table with the triplets playing on a blanket beside her. The first payment, modest as it was, represented something profound. After depositing the check, Alicia took a detour to a children's boutique she passed every day on her way to the bus stop. She purchased 3 tiny sweaters, real wool, not the synthetic blend from the discount store where she usually shopped. When she returned home and dressed the triplets in their new finery, Diane raised an eyebrow. "You should have bought something for yourself," she chided gently. "When was the last time you had anything new?" Alicia shrugged, watching Marcus examine his sweater with serious concentration. "They come first. Always." As her first year at MIT progressed, Alicia developed a sixth sense for maximizing every moment. She recorded lectures to replay during midnight feedings, wrote code on her laptop while supervising the triplets' bath time, and memorized algorithms while preparing their meals. Sleep became a luxury, sacrificed on the altar of her determination to create a better future. The triplets' first birthday arrived on a sweltering August day. Alicia had saved for weeks to buy a small cake and 3 tiny presents. As she watched her children, now crawling, babbling, and developing distinct personalities, smear frosting across their faces, she felt a surge of fierce pride that momentarily displaced her chronic exhaustion. That night, after the babies were asleep, she found a card propped against her textbooks. Inside was a child's drawing, clearly done by Diane, of 3 stick figures with a larger one labeled Mommy. The inscription read, "Happy birthday to us. You're our hero, Mommy. Love, Marcus, Malik, and Maya." Alicia pinned the card to the wall next to her bed, alongside the A+ she had received on her advanced algorithms midterm. 2 symbols of her parallel lives, each fueling the other. The real test came during the triplets' first simultaneous illness. At 15 months old, all 3 contracted a severe ear infection within days of each other. Fevers spiked, sleep became impossible, and Alicia found herself studying for finals while rocking feverish toddlers in rotation, applying cool compresses and administering medicine with the precision of a nurse. Her operating systems professor found her in the computer lab at 6 a.m., having coded through the night after finally getting the triplets to sleep under Diane's watchful eye. "Ms. Jackson," he said, observing her bloodshot eyes and trembling hands, "how are you maintaining such high grades with your situation?" Alicia looked up from her screen, too tired to be diplomatic. "By working twice as hard as everyone else, sir." He nodded slowly. "I've been teaching for 20 years. I've never seen anyone juggle what you're managing." After a pause, he added, "If you ever need an extension—" "I don't need special treatment," she interrupted. "Just equal opportunity." As the triplets approached their second birthday, their personalities emerged more distinctly. Marcus, the firstborn by 4 minutes, showed Alicia's analytical mind, systematically deconstructing his toys to understand their mechanisms. Malik, more physically adventurous, climbed everything in sight, and Maya, the youngest by 7 minutes, already showed signs of the verbal acuity that would later define her, babbling in complex speech patterns before her brothers. One evening, as Alicia sat cross-legged on the floor helping Marcus rebuild a toy he had taken apart, she noticed his profile in the soft lamplight. The determined set of his jaw, the slight furrow of concentration between his brows. The resemblance to Michael was unmistakable. She touched his cheek gently. "You look like him," she whispered, "but you'll be 1,000 times better." The toddler looked up at her with solemn eyes, uncomprehending but somehow sensing the weight of her words. He placed his small hand over hers and smiled, a gesture so pure it brought tears to her eyes. That night, after tucking all 3 into their cribs, now crowded into what had once been Diane's sewing room, Alicia stood watching them sleep. Despite the crushing fatigue, the financial struggles, and the constant juggling act her life had become, in that moment she felt a clarity of purpose that transcended exhaustion. "Everything for you," she whispered, echoing the promise she made daily. Everything. While watching her babies sleeping peacefully in the small borrowed apartment, Alicia couldn't predict that one day they would have a penthouse overlooking the Golden Gate Bridge, and that the empire she was beginning to build would surpass the Thompson fortune. August 2008. The delivery room at Massachusetts General Hospital bustled with a controlled urgency as Alicia Jackson's 20-hour labor finally reached its conclusion. Exhausted beyond comprehension, she pushed one final time as the third tiny cry joined the chorus of new life. "It's a girl," announced the doctor, lifting the smallest of the three newborns. "You have two beautiful sons and a daughter, Miss Jackson." Alicia's tears mingled with sweat as the nurses placed her children against her chest one by one. Their tiny bodies, warm and wrinkled, weighed barely 5 pounds each, yet to her they represented the entire world. "Marcus," she whispered to the firstborn, who had arrived squalling with indignation. "Malik," to the second, whose eyes had opened immediately, taking in the bright delivery room with apparent curiosity. And "Maya," to her daughter, the smallest but whose grip on Alicia's finger was surprisingly strong. Diane, who had remained steadfast through the entire labor, wiped tears from her eyes. "They're fighters, all three of them, just like you." In the quiet hours of that first night, as the hospital settled into its nocturnal rhythm, Alicia sat awake in her bed, unable to sleep despite her exhaustion. The triplets slept in their clear bassinets beside her, their tiny chests rising and falling in perfect synchronicity. "We're a team now," she whispered, reaching out to touch each perfect face. "It's us against the world." 5 days later, Alicia walked carefully into Diane's modest home, carrying Maya while the older woman followed with the two boys. The small living room had been transformed during Alicia's hospital stay. 3 second-hand bassinets stood in a semicircle near the window. A changing table fashioned from a repurposed dresser occupied one wall, and a rocking chair, a surprise gift from Diane, waited in the corner. "It's not much," Diane said, noticing Alicia's overwhelmed expression. "But it's a start." The first night at home proved to be a baptism by fire. At 11:30, Marcus began wailing, his tiny face contorted with discomfort. His cries triggered Malik, whose fussing escalated to screams within minutes. Maya, seemingly determined not to be outdone by her brothers, joined the cacophony with surprising volume for such a tiny being. By midnight, Alicia felt tears of frustration and fatigue streaming down her face as she tried rocking 2 babies while the third screamed in his bassinet. Her C-section incision throbbed with pain each time she moved. "I can't do this," she sobbed when Diane appeared in the doorway, her gray hair disheveled from sleep. "They won't stop crying. I've fed them, changed them, everything." Diane crossed the room with the confidence of experience, lifting Maya from Alicia's trembling arms. "Go sit down before you fall down," she ordered gently. "You're no good to them exhausted and in pain." With practiced efficiency, Diane showed Alicia how to swaddle the infants more tightly, explaining that the confinement mimicked the womb's security. One by one, the triplets settled, their crying reduced to occasional whimpers. "How do you know all this?" Alicia asked, collapsing into the rocking chair. "4 children of my own, 7 grandchildren," Diane replied simply. "And I've been volunteering at the Children's Hospital since retirement. Babies are basically the same. They want security, comfort, and love." In the weeks that followed, Diane became Alicia's lifeline, teaching her countless survival techniques. She demonstrated how to bathe 3 squirming infants without flooding the bathroom, how to recognize different cries signaling hunger versus discomfort, and, most crucially, how to feed all 3 simultaneously using a specialized nursing pillow she found at a consignment shop. "The trick is positioning," Diane explained, helping Alicia arrange the triplets in a formation that allowed her to nurse 2 while the third waited nearby. And acceptance that perfection is impossible with 3 babies. One afternoon, As Alicia successfully managed the triple feeding for the first time without assistance, Diane watched from the doorway with quiet pride. "You are stronger than you know," she said. "Most women would have crumbled under half of what you've endured." Alicia looked up, dark circles prominent under her eyes but determination evident in her posture. "I don't have the luxury of crumbling." As the triplets approached 6 months, Alicia had developed a system of mathematical precision to manage her days. She slept in carefully calculated 3-hour blocks, studied programming tutorials during feedings, and applied for jobs and educational opportunities during the baby's rare synchronized naps. Her body, once soft with pregnancy, had become lean and wiry from constant movement and too many missed meals. During one late-night feeding session, as she scrolled through job listings on her phone while nursing Malik, Alicia stumbled upon an advertisement that made her heart skip. The Massachusetts Institute of Technology was offering scholarships specifically for single mothers with aptitude in STEM fields. The next morning, with all 3 babies finally napping simultaneously, Alicia showed the listing to Diane. "I should apply," she said, her voice hesitant but hopeful. "The chances are minuscule, but—" "Apply," Diane interrupted firmly. "You're exactly who they're looking for." The application process was grueling. Alicia spent precious sleep hours drafting her personal statement, detailing her journey from administrative assistant to single mother of triplets with ambitions in computer science. She gathered transcripts from her community college courses, letters of recommendation from former professors, and completed sample coding challenges while the babies slept. 2 weeks after submission, she received an email requesting an in-person interview. The prospect was simultaneously thrilling and terrifying, an opportunity she couldn't afford to miss, yet logistically challenging with 3 infants dependent on her. "I'll watch them," Diane offered immediately. "You focus on convincing those academics that they'd be fools not to accept you." On the day of the interview, Alicia wore her only professional outfit, a navy blue dress purchased from a thrift store and carefully altered to disguise the fact that she was still nursing. She arrived at MIT's imposing campus feeling like an imposter among the confident students striding purposefully between buildings. In a sterile interview room, 3 professors regarded her with expressions ranging from skepticism to curiosity. The oldest, a woman with steel-gray hair cut in a severe bob, began the questioning. "Ms. Jackson," she said, glancing down at Alicia's application, "your academic background shows promise, but there's an obvious concern." She looked up, meeting Alicia's gaze directly. "How do you plan to study full-time while raising triplet infants alone?" Alicia had anticipated this question. She sat straighter, her exhaustion momentarily forgotten. "The same way I've done everything else so far, one day at a time, without giving up." She outlined her plan. Morning classes while Diane watched the babies. Remote work in the afternoons with the triplets napping beside her, studying late into the night after they went to sleep. As she spoke, she noticed the skepticism in the woman's eyes gradually shift to something resembling respect. "That's an extremely demanding schedule," said the youngest professor, a man who looked barely older than Alicia herself. "Most students without children struggle with our course load." "With all due respect," Alicia replied, meeting his gaze steadily, "most students haven't had to fight as hard as I have just to be sitting in this room." The interview concluded with non-committal thanks, leaving Alicia uncertain of her chances. For the next 3 weeks, she checked her email obsessively while continuing her relentless schedule of childcare, freelance work, and self-education. When the thick envelope arrived bearing MIT's seal, Alicia's hands trembled so badly she could barely open it. She sank to the floor of Diane's hallway as she read the first line. "We are pleased to offer you admission with a full scholarship." The triplets, now crawling and babbling, converged on her like tiny magnets, sensing her emotion. Marcus pulled himself up using her shoulder, Malik attempted to eat the acceptance letter, and Maya patted Alicia's tear-streaked face with curious fingers. "We did it," she whispered, gathering all 3 in her arms despite their squirming. This is just the beginning. The transition to student life was even more brutal than Alicia had anticipated. Her days began at 4 in the morning with feeding and preparation, followed by a crowded bus ride to campus with textbooks balanced on her knee. In lectures, she was always slightly disheveled compared to her classmates, perpetually armed with travel mugs of coffee, racing between classes with the desperate efficiency of someone who knew that every minute wasted was stolen from either her children or her studies. Her first computer science professor raised an eyebrow when she arrived with spit-up barely concealed on her shoulder. "Rough morning, Ms. Jackson?" "Every morning is rough, Professor," she replied with a tired smile. "But I'm here." After that, he made a point of having freshly brewed coffee waiting when she arrived for his 8 a.m. class. Through a teaching assistant who admired her tenacity, Alicia secured her first freelance programming job, basic website maintenance for a local nonprofit. The work was straightforward but vital. It was something she could do from Diane's kitchen table with the triplets playing on a blanket beside her. When the first payment arrived, modest as it was, Alicia felt a surge of pride unlike anything she'd experienced before. This wasn't charity or government assistance, it was money she had earned through her own developing skills. After depositing the check, she took a detour to a children's boutique she passed daily on her way to the bus stop. Inside, she purchased 3 tiny sweaters, real wool, not the synthetic blend from the discount store where she usually shopped. When she returned home and dressed the triplets in their new finery, Diane raised an eyebrow. "You should have bought something for yourself," she chided gently. "When was the last time you had anything new?" Alicia shrugged, watching Marcus examine his sweater with serious concentration. "They come first, always." As her first year at MIT progressed, Alicia developed an almost superhuman ability to maximize every moment. She recorded lectures to replay during midnight feedings, wrote code while supervising bath time, and memorized algorithms while preparing meals. Sleep became a luxury she could rarely afford, sacrificed on the altar of her determination. The triplets' first birthday arrived on a sweltering August day. Alicia had saved carefully to purchase a small cake and 3 modest gifts. As she watched her children, now crawling confidently, babbling constantly, and developing distinct personalities, smear frosting across their faces, she felt a surge of fierce pride that momentarily displaced her chronic exhaustion. That night, after the babies were asleep, she found a card propped against her textbooks. Inside was a child's drawing, clearly done by Diane, of 3 stick figures with a larger one labeled Mommy. The inscription read, "Happy birthday to us. You're our hero, Mommy. Love, Marcus, Malik, and Maya." Alicia pinned the card to the wall next to her bed, alongside the A+ she had received on her advanced algorithms midterm. 2 symbols of her parallel lives, each fueling the other. As she studied the card in the dim light, she noticed Marcus's sleeping face in the nearest crib. The curve of his jaw, the set of his features even in sleep, the resemblance to Michael was unmistakable. She touched his cheek gently. "You look like him," she whispered, "but you'll be 1,000 times better." While watching her babies sleeping peacefully in the small borrowed apartment, Alicia couldn't predict that one day they would have a penthouse overlooking the Golden Gate Bridge, and that the empire she was beginning to build would surpass the Thompson fortune. As the triplets grew from infants into toddlers, Alicia's life settled into an exhausting but manageable rhythm. Spring of 2011 brought a symbolic rebirth. The harsh Boston winter finally yielded to cherry blossoms and tender green leaves, mirroring the growth happening in Diane Wu's modest Somerville home. Marcus, Malik, and Maya, now nearly 3 years old, had transformed from helpless newborns into energetic personalities with distinct traits that amazed Alicia daily. "Mommy, look!" Marcus called one April morning, carefully arranging his blocks in a pattern only he understood. At just shy of 3, he already showed an uncanny ability with patterns and numbers that reminded Alicia of her own analytical mind. "That's wonderful, sweetheart," she replied, simultaneously typing code for a freelance project while keeping one eye on Malik. who had recently discovered the joy of climbing everything in sight. Maya, the smallest of the three but arguably the most determined, sat on Diane's lap with a picture book, reading the story aloud in a language that was half English, half imaginative babble. Her verbal development outpaced her brother's, something the pediatrician had noted with impressed surprise at their last checkup. Alicia's own transformation was equally remarkable. Now in her final year at MIT, she had blossomed from an overwhelmed single mother into a confident computer science student with a growing reputation. Her project on algorithmic efficiency had caught the attention of several professors, and her ability to balance parenthood with academic excellence had earned her both respect and wonder from classmates who struggled with far fewer responsibilities. "You should submit this algorithm to the Innovation Showcase," suggested Professor Chen one afternoon, reviewing Alicia's latest work. "It has real-world applications for energy management systems." Alicia hesitated, mentally calculating the additional hours such a submission would require. "I'll consider it," she said cautiously. "The showcase is during the triplets' birthday week." "Consider it strongly," Chen replied, her expression serious. "Your work could revolutionize how companies handle energy distribution. That's not hyperbole, Alicia. This is exceptional." Later that evening, as Alicia bathed the triplets in Diane's worn porcelain tub, her mind raced with possibilities. The Innovation Showcase was MIT's premier event for industry connections, a place where students presented their work directly to tech companies and potential investors. Participation alone would open doors that normally remained firmly closed to someone with her background. "What do you think, little ones?" she asked, helping Maya rinse shampoo from her curls. "Should Mommy show her algorithm to the important people?" "Yes!" shouted Malik, splashing water enthusiastically without understanding the question. "Gwithmic!" added Marcus, his attempt at algorithm making Alicia smile. 2 weeks later, Alicia stood nervously beside her display at the MIT Innovation Showcase. Her poster board, professionally printed with her last freelance payment, detailed the energy efficiency algorithm she'd developed. Unlike many of her classmates who had family support or substantial savings, she'd pieced together her presentation on a shoestring budget, substituting polish with substance and technical brilliance. Diane had taken a rare day off from volunteering to watch the triplets, allowing Alicia this crucial professional opportunity. As attendees began filtering through the exhibition hall, Alicia straightened her second-hand blazer and practiced her pitch under her breath. "Fascinating approach," commented an older man in an expensive suit, studying her diagrams. "You're proposing predictive load balancing based on usage patterns?" "Yes, but with an additional layer that accounts for environmental factors in real time," Alicia explained, her initial nervousness evaporating as she delved into the technical details. "The algorithm can reduce energy consumption by up to 28% in commercial buildings without sacrificing functionality." By the end of the day, her station had drawn attention from several major tech companies. A representative from a renewable energy startup handed her his card. "We're looking for exactly this kind of innovation. Call me when you're ready to discuss implementation options." That evening, as Alicia was putting the triplets to bed in their shared room, the television in the living room caught her attention. Diane was watching the local news, where a familiar face appeared on screen. "Michael Thompson announced his candidacy for Boston City Council today," the anchor reported. "The heir to the Thompson Holdings real estate empire pledged to bring traditional values and fiscal responsibility to city government." Alicia froze in the doorway, watching as Michael, impeccably dressed in a tailored suit, stood at a podium with the Boston skyline behind him. His voice, still achingly familiar despite the years, filled Diane's small living room. "I believe in the values that built this city," he declared confidently. "Hard work, personal responsibility, and traditional family structures that provide stability for our communities." A bitter laugh escaped Alicia's lips before she could stop it. Diane turned, noticing her for the first time. "That's him, isn't it?" the older woman asked quietly. Alicia nodded, unable to tear her eyes from the screen as Michael continued his speech, his arm now around a polished blonde woman introduced as his fiancée, Catherine Winthrop of the Providence Winthrops. "The hypocrisy is almost impressive," Alicia muttered. "Traditional family values from a man who doesn't even know what his own children look like." She turned away, returning to the triplets' room where 3 innocent faces were drifting toward sleep. Marcus's profile in the soft night light struck her again with its resemblance to Michael. The same determined jawline, the same intelligent eyes. The sight no longer hurt as it once had. Instead, it fueled her resolve. "Sleep tight, my loves," she whispered. "One day, everyone will know your worth." In the weeks following the innovation showcase, Alicia's algorithm generated unprecedented interest. Professor Chen connected her with patent attorneys who helped her file preliminary protection for her intellectual property, a process she could barely afford but recognized as essential. "This is just the beginning," Chen assured her after reviewing the licensing options. "With this technology properly protected, you'll have opportunities most graduates only dream about." Those opportunities materialized faster than Alicia anticipated. 3 different companies expressed interest in her algorithm, but it was a small green energy startup in San Francisco that made the most compelling offer. "We want you to head our innovation department," explained Victor Ramirez, the CEO, during a video call that Alicia took from a quiet corner of the MIT library. "Your algorithm is exactly what we've been looking for, and your approach to efficiency problems matches our company philosophy." The salary he mentioned made Alicia's breath catch. More money than she'd ever imagined earning, especially immediately after graduation. But the position required relocation to San Francisco, 3,000 miles from Diane and the support system that had made her academic success possible. That evening, she sat at Diane's kitchen table after the triplets were asleep, the offer letter spread before them alongside a cup of tea that had long gone cold. "I don't know if I can leave you," Alicia admitted, her voice tight with emotion. "After everything you've done for us." "Stop right there," Diane interrupted, placing her weathered hand over Alicia's. "You need to go. This is the opportunity you've worked for. But how will I manage alone? 3 children in a new city with no support network?" Diane smiled, though her eyes glistened with unshed tears. "You're not the same frightened girl who showed up at the library 3 years ago. You're Alicia Jackson, MIT graduate and brilliant engineer, the woman who can feed triplets while debugging code." Later that night, as Alicia checked on the sleeping triplets, Maya stirred and looked up at her with drowsy eyes. "Mommy?" she murmured. "Are we going on an airplane?" Alicia blinked in surprise. She hadn't discussed the potential move with the children yet. "Maybe, sweetheart. Why do you ask?" "I heard you talking to Grandma Diane," Maya yawned. "Will we see our daddy in San Francisco?" The innocent question pierced Alicia's heart. Though she had never lied to the triplets about their father, she had kept explanations age-appropriate, saying only that he lived in Boston and couldn't be part of their family. Sitting on the edge of Maya's bed, Alicia stroked her daughter's curls. "No, honey. He lives here in Boston. He chose not to be part of our lives." "Oh," Maya said simply, already drifting back to sleep. "That's okay. We have you." The following week, Alicia accepted the San Francisco position. The decision, once made, set off a whirlwind of activity: graduation preparations, apartment hunting from across the country, and the emotional labor of preparing 3 toddlers for a major life transition. On her graduation day, Alicia stood in her cap and gown, the triplets dressed in matching outfits sitting with Diane in the audience. As she accepted her diploma, the announcer noted her status as class valedictorian, an achievement that had seemed impossible when she first arrived with 3 infants and exhausted determination. That same evening, as local news covered the MIT graduation, Michael Thompson appeared in a different segment, officially filing papers for his city council candidacy. The juxtaposition wasn't lost on Alicia, who caught the broadcast while packing boxes in Diane's living room. Traditional values, he repeated in his press statement, standing beside his now wife, Catherine. Boston deserves leadership that understands the importance of family. The morning of their departure arrived with a mixture of excitement and heartbreak. 6 suitcases stood by the door, containing everything Alicia deemed essential for their fresh start. The triplets, now understanding enough to grasp that they were leaving, clung to Diane with unusual solemnity. "You'll always have a grandmother here," Diane promised, hugging each child tightly. "And I'll visit you in California. We'll go see the big bridge and eat sourdough bread." The goodbye at Boston Logan Airport was brief but emotional. Diane held all 3 children at once in a final embrace, whispering encouragements to each. When she turned to Alicia, words failed them both. They simply held each other, acknowledging without speaking that their lives had been forever changed by their chance meeting at the library 3 years earlier. "Thank you," Alicia finally managed, her voice thick, "for everything." "Go change the world," Diane replied, wiping away tears, "and send pictures every day." As their plane taxied down the runway, Alicia gazed out the window at the Boston skyline receding in the distance. Beside her, the triplets were already engrossed in the novelty of air travel. Maya chatting with the flight attendant, Malik pressing his face against the window, and Marcus solemnly studying the safety card with intense concentration. The plane lifted into the clear June sky, banking west toward their new life. Below, Boston grew smaller until it was just a distant cluster of buildings on the edge of the Atlantic, a city that had witnessed both her greatest heartbreak and her most transformative growth. "Our new life begins now," Alicia whispered, more to herself than to her children. As the plane landed in San Francisco, Alicia didn't imagine that in less than a decade, she wouldn't just be an employee of that startup, but the CEO of her own billion-dollar company, about to encounter the man who had once deemed her insufficient. San Francisco welcomed the Jackson family with a blanket of fog and the promise of new beginnings. As they emerged from the airport terminal, Alicia inhaled deeply, tasting salt in the air, so different from Boston's familiar scents. Maya clutched her hand while the boys gazed wide-eyed at the palm trees lining the roadway, exotic specimens they'd previously only seen in picture books. "Are we home now?" Marcus asked, his serious eyes taking in every detail of their surroundings. "Not quite yet," Alicia answered, juggling carry-on bags while guiding them toward the taxi stand. "We need to take a car to our new apartment." Their temporary housing, a small 2-bedroom apartment provided by Green Spark Energy for Alicia's first month, was located in the Mission District. It was sparse but functional, with furniture that had clearly seen better days and walls that needed a fresh coat of paint. Still, compared to their corner of Diane's home, it felt expansive. "Everyone gets a real bed," Alicia announced as they explored the space. The boys would share one bedroom while Maya would sleep on a trundle bed in Alicia's room, an arrangement that delighted her daughter, who had always craved extra moments of maternal attention. Alicia's position at GreenSpark began with promise. Her algorithm for energy efficiency was implemented across their client base, resulting in savings that exceeded projections. Victor Ramirez, the CEO who had recruited her, paraded her through the office like a prized acquisition. "This is the mind behind the efficiency protocol," he would tell visitors, his hand proprietarily on Alicia's shoulder. "MIT's finest, and she chose us." The triplets adjusted to their new life with the resilience of youth. Enrolled in a nearby public preschool, they quickly became favorites among teachers for their unusual combination of intelligence and good manners, qualities Alicia had instilled through bedtime reading sessions and gentle corrections. Each afternoon, the children accompanied Alicia to her office. Green Spark, with its startup culture, had no formal childcare policy but tolerated the arrangement as long as disruptions were minimal. Alicia transformed a corner of her workspace into a miniature classroom, with a small table, 3 tiny chairs, and educational materials that kept the triplets occupied while she worked. "Mommy, I finished my numbers," Marcus would announce quietly. showing her completed worksheets while his siblings colored or built with blocks. "That's excellent work," Alicia would respond, taking 30 seconds to review his progress before returning to her code. For nearly a year, this precarious balance functioned. Alicia's innovations brought GreenSpark increasing recognition in the renewable energy sector, while the triplets thrived in their dual environments of school and office. Yet, as the months passed, Alicia began noticing limitations in how the company implemented her work. "We need to optimize the algorithm for larger grid systems," she explained during one executive meeting, spreading diagrams across the conference table. "The current application only captures about 60% of potential savings." Victor smiled indulgently. "Our investors are happy with 60%, Alicia. Implementing these changes would delay our next product release." "But the technology could do so much more," she persisted. "Sometimes good enough is good enough," he replied, effectively ending the discussion. Similar scenes repeated over subsequent months. Alicia would identify improvements or new applications, only to have them sidelined for quicker profits or easier implementation. Her frustration mounted as she watched her creation being diluted for expediency. On a foggy Tuesday, 13 months after joining GreenSpark, Alicia sat in her cubicle reviewing quarterly reports when she noticed a pattern that made her sit up straight. The company was systematically implementing her technology in ways that prioritized quick returns over lasting efficiency, the algorithmic equivalent of harvesting fruit by cutting down the entire tree. That evening, after tucking the triplets into bed in their small apartment, Alicia opened her laptop and began typing. By morning, she had drafted a business plan for what would eventually become Skyline Innovations, a company built around the proper implementation of her algorithm and its potential expansions. 2 weeks later, she requested a meeting with Victor. "I've decided to pursue my own venture," she informed him, maintaining eye contact despite her racing heart. "I believe I can do more with my technology independently." Victor's expression cycled through surprise, amusement, and finally condescension. "Alicia, be reasonable. You're a brilliant engineer, but running a company requires capital, connections, experience, things you don't have." His words echoed Michael's dismissal years earlier, stoking a familiar determination in Alicia's chest. "I appreciate your concern," she replied evenly, "but my decision is made." Using her modest savings and a small business loan secured against her patent, Alicia leased a tiny office space in an industrial area south of Market Street. The room barely accommodated a desk, 3 child-sized chairs, and a whiteboard, but the rent was manageable, and the building had reliable internet, the 2 essentials for her fledgling operation. The triplets, now 5 years old and enrolled in kindergarten at a nearby public school, adapted to this newest change with characteristic resilience. Each afternoon, they would file into Mommy's company, hanging their small backpacks on hooks Alicia had installed at child height. "Remember, quiet voices while Mommy is working," she would remind them, setting them up with homework sheets and creative projects while she made calls to potential clients. Those early calls rarely yielded results. "I'm sorry, we don't typically invest in startups led by single mothers with no track record," one venture capitalist told her bluntly after hearing her pitch. "Perhaps when your children are older," suggested another, not bothering to hide his skepticism. On particularly difficult days when rejections piled up and financial pressures mounted, Alicia would find herself working late into the night, the triplets sleeping on inflatable mattresses she kept in the office corner. Those nights, typing code while her children's steady breathing provided rhythm in the background, tested her resolve, but never broke it. 6 months into her venture, Alicia secured her first significant client, a medium-sized manufacturing company looking to reduce energy costs. The implementation of her algorithm produced results that exceeded even her projections, reducing their electricity consumption by 34% within the first quarter. "This saved us substantially more than we expected," the company's CEO admitted during their review meeting. "Our board is extremely impressed." That successful case study led to a small write-up in a local tech publication, Startup founded by single mother revolutionizes energy efficiency. The article, though buried in the publication's middle pages, attracted attention from several potential clients and one particular investor who would change everything. Victoria Chen arrived at Skyline's modest office unannounced one Wednesday afternoon. Elegantly dressed in a tailored suit that probably cost more than Alicia's monthly rent, she observed with interest as the triplets helped organize folders for an upcoming presentation. "I hope I'm not interrupting," Victoria said, extending her hand. "I read about your work and wanted to see it firsthand." Alicia quickly ushered the children to their corner before engaging with her unexpected visitor. As they discussed the algorithm's applications and Skyline's business model, Maya approached cautiously. "Excuse me," she said politely to Victoria, displaying the social confidence that already distinguished her from her brothers. "Are you here to help my mommy's company grow? Because she works harder than anybody and is the smartest person in the world." Victoria's professional demeanor softened as she looked at the earnest 5-year-old. "Is that so?" Maya nodded seriously. "She stays up all night sometimes to make her computers work right, and she never complains even when she's really tired." Victoria turned to Alicia with newfound interest. "Your daughter has a future in sales," she observed with a smile, "and she makes a compelling case." After the children returned to their activities, Victoria leaned forward. "I see something rare in you," she said quietly. "Not just technical brilliance. That's actually quite common in Silicon Valley. What's uncommon is resilience paired with that brilliance. You've built something promising while raising 3 children alone." 2 weeks and several detailed discussions later, Victoria offered Alicia her first significant investment, $2 million in exchange for a 20% stake in Skyline Innovations. The afternoon Alicia signed the investment contract was surreal. Seated across from Victoria in a sleek downtown law office, she affixed her signature to documents that would transform her struggling startup into a legitimately funded enterprise. "To Skyline's future," Victoria said, raising a water glass in toast after the papers were signed. "And to second chances," Alicia added, thinking of the long journey from Michael's rejection to this moment of validation. That evening, Alicia took the triplets to a modest pizzeria to celebrate. The children, sensing the significance of the occasion without fully understanding it, were on their best behavior as Alicia explained what the investment meant. "Mommy got some money to help our company grow," she simplified, "which means we can move to a bigger office, hire people to help us, and maybe even find a nicer apartment." "Can I have my own room?" Malik asked immediately, practical as always. "Eventually," Alicia laughed. "Let's start with a real office first." She raised her plastic cup of grape juice and the children mimicked her gesture with solemn importance. "To the future of Skyline and the Jacksons." "To the future," they echoed, Marcus adding earnestly, "and to algorithms," which made Alicia's heart swell with pride. As they clinked their juice cups together in that simple pizza parlor, celebrating with cheap food and paper napkins, Alicia couldn't know that in just 7 years she would be dining in Michelin-starred restaurants, and her next encounter with Michael Thompson would occur not in an imposing office but on a stage where she would be the main attraction. Victoria's investment transformed Skyline Innovations almost overnight. Within 2 months of signing the contract, Alicia moved the company from its cramped industrial space to a proper office in Soma, San Francisco's burgeoning tech district. The new location featured actual conference rooms, dedicated workspaces, and most importantly for Alicia, a small area specifically designed for the triplets, complete with child-sized furniture and educational materials. On the day of the office opening, Alicia stood before a small gathering of their first employees, a software engineer, a business development specialist, and an office manager, with the triplets at her side, each holding a section of a ceremonial red ribbon. "Today marks the beginning of Skyline's real journey," she announced, trying to keep her voice steady despite the emotion threatening to overwhelm her. "Thank you all for believing in this vision. Marcus, Malik, and Maya, now 5 years old and dressed in matching blue outfits, solemnly cut the ribbon together, their small hands guided by Alicia's. The assembled group applauded, and Victoria Chen, standing nearby, gave Alicia an approving nod. "You've come a long way from that tiny room with inflatable mattresses," Victoria remarked later as they toured the completed space. "We've still got a long way to go," Alicia replied, watching as the triplets explored their designated area with expressions of wonder. With proper funding and a growing team, Skyline's implementation of Alicia's algorithm gained traction in the renewable energy sector. 6 months after the move, their client list had expanded to include several mid-sized companies throughout California, each reporting significant energy savings using Skyline's technology. The triplets, meanwhile, transitioned from public kindergarten to the Bay School, a progressive private institution known for its accelerated program for gifted children. The tuition strained Alicia's still modest salary, but she considered it an essential investment in their future. "Mom, I finished my math already," Marcus announced one afternoon in the Skyline office, holding up a worksheet filled with equations meant for children several grades older. At just 6, his mathematical intuition was already extraordinary. "That's wonderful, sweetheart," Alicia responded, momentarily looking up from the code she was debugging. "Why don't you help Maya with her fractions while I finish this?" Malik, meanwhile, was dismantling a small electronic toy in the corner, methodically examining each component with the focus of a seasoned engineer. Even at this young age, the children displayed distinct talents that both amazed and occasionally worried Alicia. They were developing so quickly that she sometimes feared they might outpace her ability to nurture their gifts properly. The most significant breakthrough for Skyline came in early 2018, when the California Energy Commission selected the company to implement its efficiency algorithm across a portion of the state's power grid. The contract, worth several $1 million, catapulted Skyline from promising startup to legitimate industry player. On the day the contract was signed, photographers from several tech publications captured Alicia shaking hands with the commission's director, the triplets watching proudly from the sidelines. Their presence at major company events had become something of a Skyline trademark. The brilliant CEO and her equally brilliant children, a family package of extraordinary talent. By the fall of 2018, the triplets had turned 10, entering that liminal space between childhood and early adolescence with the same determination they applied to everything. Their new school offered specialized tracks that allowed each child to develop their unique strengths. Marcus excelled in mathematics and theoretical physics, Malik dominated robotics and engineering competitions, and Maya emerged as a formidable presence in debate and public speaking. For the first time since their birth, Alicia found herself able to attend school functions without the constant pressure of work emergencies. Skyline had grown to over 30 employees, with specialized teams handling day-to-day operations, allowing her to focus on strategic direction and advanced development. At Maya's debate championship, Alicia sat in the audience with genuine presence, her phone silenced in her bag rather than clutched in her hand awaiting crisis calls. She watched with swelling pride as her daughter articulately dismantled her opponent's argument about environmental regulation, displaying poise that belied her 10 years. "Where did you learn to speak like that?" Alicia asked afterward, embracing Maya as she clutched her first-place trophy. "From watching you with investors," Maya replied simply. "You never let them interrupt you or change the subject." The triplets' 11th birthday brought another milestone, a professional photo shoot for Fortune magazine, which had selected Alicia for its prestigious 40 Under 40 list. The children, accustomed to their mother's growing public profile, treated the experience with good-natured tolerance, making faces behind the photographer when they thought no one was watching. "Stand still for just 5 more minutes," Alicia pleaded, as Malik fidgeted with his tie for the 10th time. "Then we can get ice cream." The resulting photo spread. Alicia, in a tailored blue suit surrounded by her 3 impeccably dressed children, ran alongside a profile detailing her journey from single mother to technology innovator. The article highlighted both her technical achievements and her unorthodox path, positioning her as a role model for women in technology and working mothers everywhere. 3,000 miles away in Boston, Michael Thompson sat in his regular barber's chair, half listening to the political gossip that normally engaged him. Recently elected city councilman with his sights already set on state office, Michael had carefully cultivated his image as a champion of traditional values and fiscal responsibility. His marriage to Catherine Winthrop, now 3 years strong, complemented his public persona perfectly. She was the ideal political wife, elegant and supportive, from an old New England family with connections throughout Boston's elite circles. As the barber worked, Michael absently flipped through a copy of Fortune left by a previous customer. He paused midway through, his attention caught by a familiar face staring back at him from the glossy pages. The woman in the photograph, confident, polished, successful, took a moment to register in his consciousness. "Alicia?" he murmured, studying the image more closely. The name beneath the photo confirmed it. Alicia Jackson, CEO of Skyline Innovations. His eyes darted to the children flanking her, noting their ages mentioned in the caption, 10 years old. A simple calculation sent an uncomfortable jolt through him, but he quickly dismissed the thought. The children looked nothing like him, he decided, ignoring the nagging recognition of his own jawline replicated in the boy on the left. That evening, Victoria called Alicia with news that sent her sinking onto her couch in shock. "The latest valuation just came in," Victoria announced, her voice vibrating with satisfaction. "Based on the government contract and the new private sector implementations, Skyline is officially valued at $520 million. A pause. "You're officially rich, Alicia. Very rich." After hanging up, Alicia sat in stunned silence in the living room of the modest 3-bedroom apartment they still occupied in the Mission District. Despite Skyline's growth, she had remained conservative with personal expenses, saving and investing rather than indulging in luxury. But now, with her equity stake valued in the hundreds of millions, the financial insecurity that had shadowed her entire adult life suddenly evaporated. The following weekend, Alicia took the triplets to view a house in Pacific Heights, a spacious Victorian with panoramic views of the bay. The real estate agent, clearly skeptical of the casually dressed single mother and 3 children, became markedly more attentive when Alicia made an all-cash offer on the spot. 2 weeks later, they moved into their new home. As the triplets explored the space, running from room to room with exclamations of delight, Alicia showed them the feature she'd been most excited about. "Everyone gets their own bedroom," she announced, leading them upstairs. "Maya, yours has the window seat you wanted. Marcus, yours has the built-in bookshelves. And Malik, yours has that extra space for your engineering projects." The children's reactions, a mixture of disbelief and joy, brought tears to Alicia's eyes. After years of shared spaces, first in Diane's home and then in their apartment, this symbol of security and permanence felt like the culmination of a long journey. That evening, as they sat around their new dining table eating pizza, a tradition Alicia maintained despite their changed circumstances, Maya asked the question that had been increasingly on her mind. "Mom," she began, unusually hesitant, "now that we're rich, can we try to find our dad?" The question hung in the air as Marcus and Malik stopped eating, their attention fixed on their mother. Alicia set down her slice, choosing her words carefully. "Your father knows where we are," she said finally. "He's always known. The choice not to be part of your lives was his, not mine." "But maybe he's changed," Maya persisted. "Maybe he would want to know us now." Malik, ever practical, interjected, "We don't need him. We have you, and you're worth 2 parents." Alicia reached across the table, squeezing Maya's hand. "If someday you want to reach out to him, I won't stop you. But I need you to understand that his absence wasn't because of anything lacking in you. It was his limitation, not yours." Later that year, Alicia attended her first major tech industry gala as an honored guest rather than a server or junior employee. Wearing a designer dress, her first, she entered the ballroom of San Francisco's Palace Hotel with a confidence that would have been unimaginable to her younger self. The triplets, accompanying her in their first formal attire, navigated the sophisticated event with surprising ease. Marcus engaged a prominent physicist in discussion about quantum computing. Malik charmed the head of engineering at Tesla with his ideas for battery efficiency, and Maya conversed fluently with a state senator about educational policy. "Your children are remarkable," commented an investor who had once rejected Alicia's early pitch, "almost as impressive as their mother." As winter approached, Diane Wu flew out from Boston for her first visit to their new home. Standing in the spacious entryway, the elderly woman took in the soaring ceilings, elegant furnishings, and spectacular views with quiet amazement. "I always knew you'd succeed," she told Alicia as they toured the children's rooms. "But this exceeds even my highest hopes for you." That night, after the triplets had showered Diane with stories and achievements before reluctantly going to bed, the two women sat on the terrace overlooking the Golden Gate Bridge, wrapped in blankets against the December chill. "Do you ever think about him?" Diane asked quietly. "About Michael?" Alicia considered the question, watching the bridge lights shimmer against the night sky. "Less and less," she admitted. "Though sometimes I see him in the children, in Marcus's profile or the way Malik concentrates." She paused. "But that's all he is now, an echo in their features, not a presence in their lives." "And you're at peace with that?" "I am," Alicia replied, realizing as she spoke that it was true. The hurt and rage that had once fueled her had transformed into something calmer but no less powerful, a certainty in her own worth that no one, not even Michael Thompson, could diminish. As she showed Diane the spacious bedrooms of the triplets, Alicia didn't imagine that in less than 4 years, her path would cross again with Michael Thompson's, no longer as the rejected young woman, but as an equal whose success would overshadow his. As she watched the bridge lights shimmer against the night sky, Alicia couldn't have predicted how drastically the world would change in just over a year. January 2020 arrived with news of a strange virus in China that seemed distant and irrelevant to Skyline's ambitious expansion plans. By March, everything had changed. "We're implementing full remote work effective immediately," Alicia announced during an emergency company-wide video call from her home office. The triplets, now 11 and a half, sat quietly in the background, already adapting to their own remote schooling setup. "I want to be absolutely clear about our priorities during this crisis. First, everyone's health and safety. Second, our commitment to our clients who need our services more than ever. And third," she paused, making eye contact through the screen, "job security. No one at Skyline will be laid off due to this pandemic. We will weather this storm together." The declaration was met with visible relief from her team of now 80 employees. While other tech companies began slashing workforces amid market uncertainty, Alicia's decision to maintain full staffing would later be recognized as both compassionate and strategically brilliant. Remote energy management systems suddenly became essential as buildings stood empty but still needed optimization. In the Pacific Heights house, Alicia transformed the space to accommodate their new reality. The formal dining room became her command center, with multiple monitors and a professional lighting setup for video conferences. The spacious living room was divided into 3 learning stations, one for each triplet, each customized to their needs. Marcus's area featured a whiteboard covered in mathematical equations that would challenge graduate students. At 12 years old, his analytical abilities had developed to an extraordinary degree. When his math teacher struggled to keep him challenged through remote learning, Alicia arranged for him to audit virtual calculus classes at Stanford. "Mom, I think I found an error in Professor Chen's approach," he announced one evening, barely looking up from his notebook where he'd been working for hours. "His optimization formula doesn't account for variable acceleration in nonlinear systems." Alicia leaned over his shoulder, examining his work. "You're right," she said after a moment, pride welling in her chest. Why don't you email him your solution? Respectfully, of course. The professor's shocked response and subsequent invitation for Marcus to join his research group's weekly meetings became the first of many such academic breakthroughs for the eldest triplet. Malik transformed the basement into an engineering laboratory with Alicia's blessing and supervision. His pandemic project became designing miniature prototypes of physical implementations for Skyline's technology. While other 12-year-olds played video games, Malik constructed scaled working models of energy distribution systems, his hands steady and precise as they manipulated tiny components. "Look what I built, Mom," he called one afternoon, summoning Alicia to the basement. On a large table sat a perfect miniature replica of a commercial building, complete with functioning LED lights and tiny solar panels. "It's demonstrating the real-time load adjustment from your algorithm. Watch what happens when I simulate cloud cover over these sensors." Alicia watched in amazement as the system automatically redistributed power in response to the changing conditions, exactly as her software would do in an actual building. "This is incredible, Malik. You've created a perfect teaching tool for our clients." Maya, the most social of the three, initially struggled most with isolation but soon channeled her communication skills into virtual advocacy. She joined a United Nations Youth Forum on sustainability, quickly distinguishing herself among participants many years her senior with her articulate passion for environmental justice. Alicia sat in the doorway of Maya's room one evening, listening as her daughter addressed young people from 47 countries on a Zoom call. "The technology exists right now to reduce global energy consumption by nearly 30%, Maya explained with the confidence of a seasoned presenter. "The barriers aren't technical, they're political and economic. Our generation must demand implementation of these solutions before it's too late." When Maya finished her presentation, the moderator, a UN official in his 40s, looked visibly impressed. "Ms. Jackson, that was remarkably well articulated. May I ask how old you are?" 12, sir," Maya replied with a smile, "but I've been learning about energy efficiency since I was in diapers." As the pandemic stretched from weeks into months, Skyline's remote capabilities proved invaluable to clients struggling with empty buildings and reduced staff. Alicia's algorithm, now expanded and refined, allowed property managers to maintain optimal systems with minimal on-site presence. The company's value continued to climb even as the broader economy faltered. In June, Victoria Chen called with news that made Alicia momentarily forget the ongoing global crisis. "We just closed the Series C funding round," Victoria announced, her voice carrying the restrained excitement of a seasoned investor who had seen a major gamble pay off. "The Skyline valuation is official, $2.3 billion. Alicia gripped the phone tighter, staring out her office window at the San Francisco fog rolling over the Golden Gate. $2.3 billion, she repeated, the number simultaneously abstract and overwhelming. "Congratulations," Victoria continued. "You're now officially a billionaire, several times over. Not bad for a single mom who started in a closet-sized office with 3 kindergartners." After the call, Alicia sat motionless, processing the magnitude of what had just happened. When she'd left Boston with the triplets 7 years earlier, she had hoped merely for stability, a decent job, enough money for a comfortable apartment, perhaps savings for the children's education. Now she possessed wealth beyond comprehension, the kind of financial power that had once been wielded against her. The irony wasn't lost on her when 2 weeks later, Forbes requested an interview and photo shoot for their cover story. "The Unlikely Billionaire: How a Single Mother Revolutionized Energy Technology." The photographer, maintaining strict COVID protocols, captured Alicia and the triplets on their terrace, the city skyline providing a dramatic backdrop. The resulting image, Alicia standing confidently in a simple but elegant black dress, flanked by her 3 poised children, would become iconic in tech circles. 2,000 miles away in Boston, Massachusetts State Senator Michael Thompson sat in a socially distanced legislative session, half listening to budget discussions while scrolling through news on his tablet. His political rise had progressed according to plan, from city council to state senate in just over 3 years, with polling already underway for a potential congressional run. Catherine, his wife of 5 years, had proven the perfect political partner, hosting fundraisers and managing his public image with practiced precision. When he swiped to the digital edition of Forbes, the face staring back at him from the cover sent an electric shock of recognition through his body. Alicia Jackson, older, more polished, radiating confidence, looked directly into the camera with the self-assurance of someone who had nothing to prove. The headline burned into his consciousness: "The Unlikely Billionaire." Michael's fingers trembled slightly as he tapped the article, scanning the content with increasing discomfort. The story detailed Alicia's journey from MIT to Silicon Valley, her creation of Skyline Innovations, and the algorithm that had revolutionized energy management. But what caught his attention, what made his collar suddenly feel too tight, was the photograph of 3 children, identified as Jackson's 12-year-old triplets, Marcus, Malik, and Maya. He studied their faces with growing unease, noticing for the first time the unmistakable Thompson features: his own jawline, his father's eyes, his grandfather's serious expression, blended with Alicia's softer features and darker skin tone. The boy on the left, Marcus, could have been Michael himself at that age, with a few subtle differences. A message from his chief of staff interrupted his spiraling thoughts. Conference call with Energy Policy Committee in 5 minutes. Virtual meeting room details attached. Michael closed the Forbes article, but Alicia's image, and those of the 3 children who were almost certainly his, remained branded in his mind throughout the call. His distraction must have been noticeable, as his chief of staff messaged him privately, "Everything okay, Senator? You seem off today." "Fine," he typed back, "just processing some unexpected news." When the committee coordinator announced, "We've invited Alicia Jackson of Skyline Innovations to join today's discussion on renewable energy integration," Michael felt his heart skip a beat. He quickly studied the attendee list and saw her name among the invited experts. "I need to reschedule," he messaged his chief of staff abruptly. "Unavoidable conflict just came up." "Senator, this is the 3rd rescheduling of this committee. Your attendance is expected." "Handle it," Michael replied, closing his laptop with uncharacteristic abruptness. The thought of facing Alicia, even in a virtual meeting with dozens of others present, sent a wave of panic through him that he hadn't experienced since his first political debate. That evening, in his Beacon Hill brownstone, Michael found himself researching Skyline Innovations with obsessive attention, reading every article and watching every interview featuring Alicia. In each video, he searched the background for glimpses of the children, his children, trying to reconcile their existence with the life he had built. Catherine found him at his desk well past midnight, still scrolling through news stories. "Michael, it's almost 2 in the morning. What are you working on that's so urgent?" He closed the browser quickly. "Just preparing for the Energy Committee meeting." 3,000 miles away in San Francisco, Alicia sat with the triplets in their living room for one of their increasingly philosophical family discussions. As they had grown older, these conversations had evolved from simple explanations to complex ethical debates that challenged even Alicia's thinking. "I've been researching our father," Marcus announced without preamble, his directness reminiscent of Alicia's own approach to difficult subjects. "Michael Thompson, currently state senator for Massachusetts, previously Boston City Councilman, graduated Harvard Law, heir to Thompson Holdings." Alicia felt her breath catch. They had never hidden their father's identity from the children, but neither had they discussed him in such specific terms. "You've been researching him?" Maya nodded. "We were curious after our genetics unit in biology. Marcus wanted to understand heritability patterns." Malik, practical as always, added, "He doesn't seem like someone who would have contributed much value to our lives. His voting record on environmental issues is particularly disappointing." Alicia couldn't help but smile at their clinical assessment. "Are you interested in contacting him?" The triplets exchanged glances, seeming to communicate silently as they often did. It was Marcus who answered, "Based on available data, he doesn't appear to be someone worth our time investment. But," Maya added, more gentle than her brothers, "if we did ever meet him, would that be okay with you, Mom? We wouldn't want to hurt you." Alicia moved to sit between them on the couch, putting an arm around Maya while reaching for the boy's hands. "You have the right to know your origins. I would never stand in the way of that." As she comforted her curious children about their absent father, Alicia didn't imagine that in less than a year, they would all be face to face with Michael Thompson at one of San Francisco's most important events, where decades of secrets would be exposed before America's elite. January 16, 2023 dawned crisp and clear in San Francisco, sunlight streaming through the floor-to-ceiling windows of Alicia's Pacific Heights penthouse. She stood at the kitchen island, reviewing her presentation notes for the upcoming Technology Innovation Conference while sipping her morning coffee from a hand-painted mug, a gift from Maya on Mother's Day years ago. Despite its chip on the rim and the amateur artwork, it remained her favorite among the expensive porcelain that filled her cabinets. The triplets, now 15 and in the midst of their sophomore year at Stanford Academy, moved through their morning routines with practiced efficiency. Marcus appeared first, his tall frame already rivaling Alicia's height, the set of his jaw unmistakably reminiscent of Michael Thompson. "Mom, can I take your car to pick up Maya from debate practice?" he asked, adjusting his Stanford Academy blazer. The team meeting ran late, and she just texted that they're finishing up. Alicia glanced at her watch, a Patek Philippe that had been a gift to herself when Skyline's valuation crossed $3 billion. "The Tesla keys are on the entry table," she replied. "Remember, we have the event at the Fairmont at 7. I want all three of you impeccable. Tailored suits, polished shoes, hair properly styled," Marcus recited with a half-smile. "The Jackson Family Public Appearance Checklist, version 4.0. Alicia smiled, recognizing her own meticulousness reflected in her eldest son. "Don't forget Malik. He's probably lost in that robotics project in the basement." As Marcus left, Alicia's assistant's voice came through the apartment's integrated communication system. "Ms. Jackson, the Vogue team confirmed the September issue interview, and the Wall Street Journal wants to move up the feature on Skyline's Asian market expansion. They're requesting next Tuesday instead of the following week." "Schedule the Journal for Tuesday afternoon," Alicia responded, scrolling through the final slides of her presentation. "And tell Vogue we'll need approval on the final copy before publication." She closed her laptop, taking a moment to absorb the stillness of the morning and the view of the bay stretching before her. 15 years ago, she'd been living in a shelter, pregnant and abandoned. Now, at 40, she commanded a technology empire valued at nearly $4 billion, had been featured on more magazine covers than she could count, and raised 3 extraordinary children entirely on her own. Her personal assistant, David, arrived precisely at 9, carrying a portfolio containing the final details for the evening's event. "Everything's prepared for tonight, Ms. Jackson," he reported, placing the folder on the counter. "You'll receive the Innovator of the Year award after the main dinner. We've confirmed your table with the CEOs of Google, Apple, and Tesla, plus the Governor of California." "Perfect," Alicia nodded, opening the folder to review the evening's schedule. She paused at the speakers list, her finger hovering over a name that sent an unexpected jolt through her system. Senator Michael Thompson, R. Massachusetts. Panel discussion, technology policy and regulation. "Michael is attending?" she asked, her voice carefully neutral. David, who had been with her long enough to know the broad strokes of her past, nodded. "His office confirmed last week. He's been added to the policy panel due to his work on the Senate Technology Committee." Alicia closed the folder, her expression betraying nothing of the sudden turbulence beneath her composed exterior. "Thank you, David. Please make sure the children's security detail is doubled tonight." Throughout the day, as Alicia prepared for the conference, the knowledge of Michael's attendance lingered at the edges of her consciousness. They had never crossed paths since that winter day in his Boston office 15 years ago. She had seen him, of course, on television, in newspapers, his political rise tracked through media she couldn't avoid. But physical proximity was different, carrying a weight that digital images couldn't convey. By late afternoon, Alicia stood in her walk-in closet, surveying options for the evening. Her stylist had sent several selections, each more exquisite than the last. She settled on a Carolina Herrera gown in sapphire blue, the color of power, of depth, of the ocean that separated the woman she had become from the girl she had been. As her makeup artist applied the finishing touches, Alicia caught sight of a familiar face on the muted television in her dressing area. Michael Thompson, arriving at San Francisco International Airport, surrounded by aides and security. At 47, he remained handsome, silver threading his dark hair at the temples, his posture as commanding as ever. The caption identified him as a rising star in the Republican Party and potential presidential contender. "Perfect," murmured the makeup artist, stepping back to admire her work. "Absolutely flawless." In the mirror, Alicia saw a woman who bore little resemblance to the frightened young secretary who had once trembled in Michael Thompson's office. Her eyes held confidence born of struggle and triumph. Her posture spoke of a woman accustomed to commanding rooms filled with powerful people. At 6:30, the triplets gathered in the penthouse foyer, each dressed with the careful elegance Alicia had instilled in them. Marcus in a perfectly tailored charcoal suit, his height and bearing making him look older than 15. Malik in navy blue, his thoughtful eyes taking in everything, always analyzing. And Maya, resplendent in a modest but sophisticated emerald dress, adjusting the pearl necklace Alicia had given her on their last birthday. Professor Wilson mentioned that Senator Harass confirmed her attendance, Maya said, excitement brightening her features. "She wants to hear about our renewable energy project for public schools." "Stay professional but warm," Alicia advised, a familiar pre-event reminder. "Remember, you're not just students tonight. You're representing Skyline and our family." As the elevator descended to the lobby where their car waited, Alicia felt a strange sense of destiny, as if the evening had been choreographed by forces beyond her control. For years, she had built her life and her company with singular focus, never allowing herself to be defined by Michael's rejection. Yet tonight, their paths would cross again, with the living proof of his greatest mistake walking confidently by her side. The Fairmont Hotel glowed against the evening sky, its historic facade illuminated against the darkness. A line of limousines and luxury cars disgorged passengers at the entrance, tech billionaires, venture capitalists, politicians, and celebrities, all converging for the industry's most prestigious annual gathering. As Alicia's car pulled up, photographers recognized her immediately, cameras flashing to capture the CEO and her rarely photographed children. The triplets handled the attention with practiced ease, neither seeking the spotlight nor shying from it, a balance Alicia had carefully taught them over years of increasing public visibility. Inside the grand ballroom, crystal chandeliers cast a warm glow over round tables dressed in white linen. The air hummed with conversation, deals being made, connections being forged, power being exchanged in handshakes and whispers. Alicia navigated this landscape with practiced ease, introducing the triplets to key figures in technology and politics. "Alicia, the woman of the hour," called out Elena Martinez, CEO of a leading AI firm, embracing her warmly. "And these must be the famous Jackson triplets. I've heard incredible things about your work." Marcus extended his hand with perfect poise. "It's an honor to meet you, Ms. Martinez. Your paper on neural network applications in climate modeling was enlightening." Across the room, Michael Thompson adjusted his tie while concluding a conversation with an important donor. His aide leaned in, speaking quietly near his ear. "Senator, I've just reviewed the final awardee list. Alicia Jackson of Skyline Innovations will receive the main award tonight." Michael froze, his glass halfway to his lips. "Alicia Jackson? You're certain? Yes, sir. The billionaire CEO. They say she practically revolutionized the renewable energy sector. The president appointed her to the Innovation Council last month. Michael's expression remained neutral, years of political training masking the shock rippling through him. 15 years had passed since that afternoon in his Boston office. 15 years since he had dismissed Alicia as unsuitable. 15 years believing she had disappeared with a check and a problem solved. His eyes scanned the room until they found her, unmistakable in sapphire blue, radiating confidence as she spoke with the governor of California. But what made his blood run cold were the three adolescent figures at her side. The triplets were undeniably his children. The same defined Thompson jawline, the same penetrating eyes, the same proud posture, though with skin tones several shades darker than his own. Marcus, the tallest of the three, had his exact expression when concentrating. Malik possessed his characteristic smile. Maya had the same determined gaze Michael saw every morning in the mirror. "Senator, are you feeling all right?" asked his assistant, noting his sudden pallor. Michael couldn't respond. Across the ballroom, Alicia was greeting the CEO of Google, introducing the children with evident pride. The teenagers conversed with sophisticated ease among important figures, clearly accustomed to navigating this elite world. During dinner, Michael found himself unable to focus on the conversations at his table of congressmen and mid-tier executives. His attention repeatedly drifted to the VIP table where Alicia sat surrounded by some of the most powerful names in the country. His own table, once a source of pride, now seemed insignificant in comparison. The inevitable moment arrived when, after dinner, Michael approached the bar. Alicia stood there, requesting sparkling water with lime. "Alicia," he said, his voice nearly failing him. She turned, and for an imperceptible second, surprise crossed her face. Then, with the composure of someone accustomed to handling corporate crises, she simply smiled cordially. "Senator Thompson, what a surprise." You look incredible," he stammered, unable to formulate anything more eloquent. "Thank you. I hear your name is being considered for the presidential primaries." "Yes, the polls are promising." Michael struggled to maintain his political poise. "Alicia, I had no idea that you—" "Mom!" Maya approached, followed by her brothers. "Senator Harris loved our presentation on renewable energy. She wants to implement the pilot project in Oakland." Michael watched, speechless, as the three teenagers animatedly spoke with their mother, completely oblivious to his identity. "Ah, let me introduce you," said Alicia with a polite smile. "These are my children, Marcus, Malik, and Maya. Kids, this is Senator Thompson from Massachusetts." The teenagers extended their hands politely, with the same confident smiles as their mother. "Pleasure to meet you, Senator," said Marcus. "I read your article on energy policies in the Harvard Law Review. I respectfully disagree with several points, especially regarding fossil fuel subsidies." Michael shook the hand of the son he had never known, feeling the world spin around him. "You read my article? How old are you?" 15, sir. We're sophomores at Stanford Academy. We're taking advanced coursework in public policy." Before Michael could process this information, the Master of Ceremonies announced that the program would continue with the main award presentation. "Excuse me, Senator," said Alicia. "I need to head to the stage." Michael watched, stunned, as Alicia ascended the stage to thunderous applause. The presenter introduced her with an impressive list of achievements. MIT honors graduate, holder of 28 patents, built Skyline Innovations from scratch into a company valued at nearly $4 billion, member of the Presidential Innovation Council, philanthropist whose educational initiatives had benefited over 50,000 children. Under the stage lights, Alicia shone. Her acceptance speech was eloquent, inspiring, and at one point, devastating for Michael. "I built Skyline from nothing, while raising 3 extraordinary children alone, after being abandoned by a man who believed my color and background defined my worth. Today, I'm proud to say our company is worth 3 times more than the family empire that rejected me." Her gaze briefly met Michael's in the audience before continuing with a message of hope for other women in similar situations. The audience gave her a standing ovation, while Michael remained motionless, feeling curious glances turn in his direction. While Alicia delivered her powerful speech, Michael couldn't imagine that this encounter was just the beginning, and that in the hours to follow, decades of secrets would be exposed before America's elite, forever altering the course of his political career and rewriting the narrative of her remarkable journey. Alicia's final words hung in the air as the applause thundered through the ballroom. Under the brilliant chandeliers, a sea of standing figures, tech moguls, politicians, celebrities, paid homage to the woman who had just publicly referenced her rejection by Michael Thompson without naming him directly. As she descended from the stage, accepting congratulatory handshakes and embraces, Michael remained frozen in his seat, aware of curious glances darting between him and Alicia. The award ceremony transitioned to a lavish cocktail reception where servers glided through the crowd with champagne and hors d'oeuvres. The triplets rejoined their mother, surrounding her with obvious pride as photographers captured the moment, a visual testament to her greatest achievement. Michael watched from across the room, unable to tear his eyes away from the family tableau. With deliberate movements that belied his inner turmoil, he approached a passing waiter and exchanged his empty tumbler for a fresh scotch. The liquid burned his throat, but did nothing to calm the storm brewing inside him. "Quite the speech," remarked a silver-haired venture capitalist beside him. "Jackson's story is remarkable. Building an empire while raising triplets alone. Makes you wonder what kind of man would walk away from that family." Michael managed a non-committal noise, his political training allowing him to maintain his composed exterior while his mind raced. 15 years of carefully constructed narrative, devoted family man, champion of traditional values, now threatened to unravel in a single evening. Across the room, Alicia introduced Marcus to the Secretary of Energy, her hand resting proudly on her son's shoulder. The boy, no, young man, spoke with a confidence and articulation that made several nearby executives nod appreciatively. Malik engaged a group of engineers in what appeared to be a detailed technical discussion, while Maya charmed the governor of California with her poise. "Senator Thompson," called out a journalist from the Washington Post, approaching with notepad in hand. "I noticed an interesting moment during Ms. Jackson's speech. You seemed quite affected when she mentioned being abandoned. Do you have history with the Innovator of the Year?" Michael straightened his tie, buying precious seconds. "I'm acquainted with Ms. Jackson from her early career in Boston," he offered vaguely. "Her success is certainly impressive." The journalist persisted. "Some attendees noted a resemblance between you and her children, particularly the eldest boy. Any comment on that observation?" "I'm afraid I need to join my panel colleagues," Michael deflected, gesturing toward a group of politicians across the room. "If you'll excuse me." He retreated strategically, heart pounding beneath his perfectly tailored suit. The scenario playing out was his worst nightmare, one he had successfully avoided for 15 years through willful ignorance and strategic absence. For the next hour, Michael maintained a careful distance from Alicia and the triplets, engaging in political small talk while continuously monitoring their location in his peripheral vision. When the crowd thinned slightly as guests began claiming seats for the upcoming panel discussions, he found himself alone at the bar, ordering mineral water to clear his head. "Another sparkling water with lime, please," came a familiar voice beside him. Michael turned to find Alicia standing there, poised and collected in her sapphire gown. Up close, the transformation from the young woman he had dismissed was even more striking. Her skin glowed with health and confidence, fine jewelry adorned her wrists and ears, and her eyes held none of the desperate hope he remembered. "Alicia," he managed, turning to face her fully. "Your speech was impressive," he offered lamely, aware of how inadequate the words sounded. "Thank you," she replied, accepting her water from the bartender with a gracious smile. 15 years of material to draw from. The subtle jab wasn't lost on him. You've done extraordinarily well for yourself. For myself and for our children, she corrected quietly, taking a sip of her water. The simple pronoun, our, hit Michael with physical force. "Why didn't you ever tell me?" he asked, his voice dropping to ensure privacy despite the surrounding noise. "They're my children. I had a right to know." Alicia regarded him with devastating calm. "Right? You renounced any right when you told me that no Thompson would ever acknowledge mixed-race offspring." "Your exact words, Michael, I never forgot. I was young, stupid, pressured by my family. I made a terrible mistake." "A mistake that lasted 15 years? She arched an elegant eyebrow. "Interesting that it only became a mistake when you discovered I'm CEO of a billion-dollar company and that your children attend Stanford." "It's not like that," Michael insisted, his political facade cracking slightly. "I want to know them, Alicia. I want to be part of their lives. They have a perfect life without you, Michael. 3 brilliant teenagers who never felt your absence." Michael looked past her shoulder, watching the triplets conversing animatedly with some of technology's most influential names. "Do they know about me?" "They know their biological father chose not to be part of their lives. I never lied to them. I can offer so much, Alicia. Financial support, opening doors." She interrupted with a genuine laugh of amusement. "Financial support? Michael, my children have trust funds larger than your net worth. And as for opening doors," she gestured to the room around them. "Look around. The doors that matter are already open to them." Their intense conversation had not gone unnoticed. A small group of reporters, sensing a story, began drifting in their direction. The Washington Post journalist from earlier led the pack, her expression alert with professional hunger. "Ms. Jackson, could you tell us about your history with Senator Thompson?" she asked, notepad ready. "Have you known each other for a long time?" Michael paled visibly, but Alicia smiled with perfect composure. "The senator and I knew each other in Boston many years ago. Actually, he's the biological father of my children, although he chose not to participate in raising them." A shocked silence fell over the small group, followed by a frenzy of note-taking and camera flashes. Michael stood rigid, feeling the ground shift beneath his feet as 15 years of carefully maintained separation collapsed in a single sentence. "Senator, do you have any comment?" asked another reporter, thrusting a recorder toward him. Before Michael could formulate a response, the triplets approached, drawn by the sudden commotion around their mother. "What's happening, Mom?" Maya asked, her intelligent eyes taking in the scene with quick assessment. Alicia looked at her children, then at Michael, and made a decision. "Marcus, Malik, Maya, this is Michael Thompson, your biological father." The teenagers regarded the man before them with expressions ranging from surprise to analytical interest. There was no visible anger or resentment, only a calm evaluation that was disconcertingly mature for their 15 years. "Why did you never want to meet us?" Malik asked directly, with the same objective precision he applied to his engineering projects. Michael felt every camera and gaze upon him. "I made a terrible mistake. The worst mistake of my life." "Was it because of our race?" Maya's voice cut through the tension, clear and direct. "Because we're half black?" The question, so simple and devastating, echoed in the silence that followed. Michael felt his political career crumbling with each second of hesitation. "I was a different person back then," he finally answered. "I let family expectations and political ambitions cloud my judgment." Marcus, the most pragmatic of the three, merely nodded. "I understand. Choices have consequences, as Mom always says." "I can try to make it up to you," Michael offered desperately. "I can be part of your lives now, get to know you, support you." It was then that Marcus smiled, a smile so eerily similar to Michael's that it was like looking into a time-distorted mirror. "Actually, Senator, I don't think we need support. Last week, we established a scholarship fund for youth from single-parent families, the Thompson-Jackson Fund. It has an initial endowment of 50 million. Thompson Jackson? Michael repeated, confusion evident in his voice. We thought it fair to acknowledge our complete heritage, explained Maya, even the parts that chose not to acknowledge us. The surrounding reporters scribbled frantically, capturing every word of the exchange. What had begun as a chance encounter was rapidly transforming into tomorrow's headline, the kind that could derail political careers and rewrite public narratives. $50 million, Michael echoed, struggling to process both the amount and the implication. You named it after both of us? Genetic heritage is relevant regardless of emotional connection, Malik explained with scientific detachment. We recognize the biological contribution even in absence of the social one. A flash of cameras captured Michael's expression, a mixture of awe and dismay that would appear on news websites within the hour. The triplets, having delivered their stunning revelation, turned to their mother with perfect synchronicity. The panel on renewable energy policy begins in 10 minutes, Marcus reminded her. You promised to introduce us to Dr. Nakamura beforehand. Alicia nodded, placing a hand on Maya's shoulder. You're right, we should go. She turned to Michael, her expression professionally neutral. Senator, I'm sure we'll cross paths again before the evening ends. As they walked away, Michael remained rooted in place, surrounded by journalists whose questions now came rapid fire. Senator, did you know about the triplets before tonight? How does this revelation affect your family values platform? Will you be acknowledging the children publicly? What does your wife think of this development? The political training of 2 decades allowed Michael to mumble something about a private family matter and need time to process before his aide swooped in, creating a buffer between him and the press. But the damage was done. In the age of social media and instant news, the story was already spreading through the ballroom, devices lighting up with notifications, eyes turning to observe the unfolding drama. Across the room, Alicia guided her children toward their next conversation, her posture betraying none of the emotional earthquake that had just occurred. 15 years of silence had ended in less than 15 minutes of conversation, yet she moved forward with the same grace that had carried her from a homeless shelter to a penthouse. That night, while the Jackson family left the event in their limousine, Michael Thompson remained behind, surrounded by reporters asking increasingly difficult questions about parental abandonment, racial prejudice, and political hypocrisy. In the morning, newspapers would splash the story across their headlines. Michael's campaign committee would collapse as major donors began withdrawing their support. His current wife, a Boston socialite who had carefully cultivated her image as the perfect political spouse, would cancel all public appearances. While the news cycle began its feeding frenzy on Michael Thompson's imploding career, Alicia Jackson slept peacefully in her Pacific Heights penthouse, finally free of the weight that had shadowed even her greatest achievements, the unresolved past that had now been confronted and settled before the very power structures that had once excluded her. The morning headlines across America told the story in bold typeface. Senator's secret family revealed. Thompson's abandoned triplets confront father at tech gala. Family values candidate hid children for 15 years. The story dominated news cycles with an insatiable appetite for every detail of the encounter at the Fairmont Hotel. Video clips of the confrontation, captured on dozens of smartphones, spread across social media platforms with the virality reserved for career-ending scandals. In his suite at the St. Regis San Francisco, Michael Thompson sat motionless at the desk, scrolling through the cascade of notifications on his phone. His campaign manager had called 17 times. His wife hadn't called at all, her silence more devastating than any tirade could have been. Outside his door, he could hear his aides arguing in hushed, urgent tones about damage control strategies. 3 floors below in the same hotel, Samuel Green, the campaign's chief strategist, addressed a hastily assembled crisis team. The family values angle is completely unsalvageable, he declared, pacing the conference room. Our polling has already dropped 12 points overnight. Major donors are requesting meetings to reassess their commitment. He made air quotes with visible disgust, which is code for running for the exits. Back in Boston, Katherine Thompson canceled her scheduled appearances at 3 charity events, citing a sudden illness. The same morning, she contacted her family's long-retained law firm. Meanwhile, in Pacific Heights, Alicia woke to the soft California light filtering through smart glass windows that had automatically adjusted their opacity with the rising sun. Her phone displayed hundreds of notifications, which she ignored as she made her way to the kitchen where the triplets were already gathered for breakfast, engaged in animated conversation. The statistical probability of this scenario playing out publicly was actually quite low, Marcus was saying, spreading avocado on whole grain toast. The convergence of variables required, Mom's award, his panel appearance, the press presence, creates an almost theatrical narrative structure. I calculated a 4.3% chance of direct confrontation, Malik agreed, not looking up from the prototype he was tinkering with at the breakfast counter, though I didn't factor in Mom's directness with the reporters. Maya, scrolling through news coverage on her tablet, looked up as Alicia entered. "You're trending on every platform, Mom. The Forbes profile requests just doubled, and 3 morning shows want interviews." Alicia poured herself coffee in the chipped mug, the familiar routine anchoring her amid the storm of attention. "How are you 3 feeling about all this?" she asked, studying their expressions carefully. The triplets exchanged their characteristic glance, that silent communication that had developed in the womb and strengthened through 15 years of shared experience. "Scientifically fascinating," offered Malik. "Sociologically predictable," added Marcus. "Personally," Maya paused, always the most emotionally intuitive of the 3. "Surprisingly okay. He's exactly as you described, impressive on paper, hollow underneath." A week after the conference, as the media frenzy showed no signs of abating, a cream-colored envelope arrived at Alicia's home office via special courier. The Thompson family crest was embossed on the heavy stationery, an ostentatious touch that made Alicia shake her head slightly as she broke the seal. Michael's handwriting was exactly as she remembered, precise, controlled, with the slight rightward slant of someone perpetually rushing toward the next achievement. "Alicia," the letter began without preamble, "words cannot express the depth of my regret for actions taken 15 years ago and for every day since. I'm writing to request, to beg, if necessary, for an opportunity to meet with Marcus, Malik, and Maya in whatever context you deem appropriate. I understand I have no right to make this request, but I hope you'll consider it, not for my sake, but for theirs. I'm willing to accept any terms, any conditions you set forth. Please contact me directly on my personal number below. With deepest regret and hope, Michael." Maya found her mother still holding the letter, staring thoughtfully out the window at the Golden Gate Bridge in the distance. "What will you tell him?" she asked, having instantly assessed the letter's source from the distinctive envelope. Alicia turned, tucking a strand of hair behind her ear, a gesture from her youth that emerged only in moments of deep contemplation. "I'm going to tell him that the decision isn't mine to make. It's yours, all 3 of yours." Later that evening, the triplets gathered in the home library, a room Alicia had designed with floor-to-ceiling bookshelves and comfortable reading nooks, prioritizing it over the home theater that their wealthy peers preferred. Marcus brought data, Michael's voting record, public statements, and career trajectory meticulously analyzed. Malik contributed a clinical assessment of genetic inheritance patterns and psychological research on absent father relationships. Maya, who had already read the letter, offered her emotional intelligence and instinctive understanding of human motivation. "His political career is essentially over," Marcus concluded, closing his laptop. "Our existence contradicts his entire platform. The hypocrisy is too fundamental to overcome with conventional crisis management." "His genetic contribution is undeniable," Malik observed, gesturing to his own jawline that so clearly echoed Michael's, though the phenotypic expression shows significant maternal influence as well. "He's desperate," Maya said simply, "but not just politically. There's genuine regret there, The question is whether it's regret for losing us or regret for getting caught. The discussion continued late into the night, their analytical minds approaching the question from every angle. By morning, they had reached consensus on a response that reflected their extraordinary maturity and self-possession. When Alicia called them to her study the following day, she was surprised to find them already prepared with their decision. "We'll consider meeting him next summer," Marcus announced, serving as their spokesperson as he often did in family matters. "After we complete our MIT presentations and finalize the expansion of the solar project." "Not here," Malik added. "Neutral territory would be optimal for initial contact." "And you should be present," Maya concluded. "Not because we need protection, but because your experience matters in this equation." Alicia looked at her children, poised, brilliant, and somehow untouched by the abandonment that had shaped so much of her own journey. "I'm incredibly proud of how you're handling this," she told them, her voice warm with emotion. "Whatever you decide, I support you completely." In Massachusetts, the political fallout continued with brutal efficiency. Major donors withdrew support, citing personal reasons in public statements while privately expressing fury at being blindsided. Television ads featuring Michael speaking about family first were hastily pulled from rotation. The state Republican committee called an emergency meeting to discuss leadership transitions. 2 weeks after the Fairmont incident, Michael's chief of staff delivered the final blow. Internal polling showed his approval rating had plummeted 27 points, making his re-election virtually impossible. His presidential exploratory committee quietly disbanded, staff members already updating their resumes. That same afternoon, Catherine Thompson's attorney delivered divorce papers to Michael's Boston office, citing irreconcilable differences and public humiliation as grounds. The Boston Globe ran the story on page 3, a testament to how quickly Michael's relevance was fading. In San Francisco, life continued with remarkable normalcy for the Jackson family. The triplets prepared for their summer presentations at MIT, where their renewable energy project had attracted attention from the scientific community. Skyline Innovations announced its expansion into Asian markets, with Alicia scheduled to open their Tokyo office in September. The Thompson-Jackson Scholarship Fund received its first 500 applications from promising students in single-parent households across America. On a clear May evening, as Alicia reviewed quarterly projections in her home office, her personal phone rang with an unfamiliar Boston number. After a moment's hesitation, she answered. "Alicia, it's Michael," came the voice, sounding older and far less assured than she remembered. "Thank you for taking my call." "What can I do for you, Michael?" she asked, her tone professional but not cold. "I received a letter from Marcus," he said, audible disbelief in his voice. "He says they might be willing to meet me this summer. Is that really happening?" "That's their decision to make," Alicia confirmed. "They're remarkably self-possessed individuals." "I can see that," Michael replied quietly. "The scholarship fund they created, $50 million. It's extraordinary. They believe in transforming negative experiences into positive action," she explained. "Something I tried to teach them from the beginning." A pause stretched between them. 15 years of absence distilled into seconds of silence. "Catherine filed for divorce," he finally said, his voice hollow. "The party has essentially excommunicated me. The Thompson Holdings Board asked me to step down to focus on personal matters." She could hear the bitter air quotes. "I've lost everything, Alicia." She allowed herself a moment to absorb the symmetry of it all. The man who had once dismissed her as nothing now facing his own version of rock bottom. But the vengeful satisfaction she might have expected to feel was notably absent, replaced by something closer to peace. "You haven't lost everything, Michael," she said finally. "You've lost what you had. But you've also been given a chance to know 3 remarkable human beings who share your DNA. Whether that opportunity becomes something meaningful depends entirely on you." After the call ended, Alicia walked to the terrace where the triplets were enjoying the sunset, engrossed in their typical blend of scientific discussion and sibling banter. Watching them, confident, brilliant, and whole, despite the absence that might have defined them, she felt a profound sense of completion. The journey from that cold Boston office to this sunlit San Francisco evening had been longer and harder than she could have imagined that day 15 years ago. But standing here now, successful beyond her wildest dreams and mother to 3 extraordinary children, Alicia recognized that the justice she had found hadn't come through revenge or retaliation, but through the extraordinary success she had built from the ashes of abandonment. Michael's greatest punishment wasn't the headlines or ruined career. It was realizing he could have been part of something truly exceptional, a brilliant family that was now complete without him. If you enjoyed today's video, I'm sure you'll love the next one. Don't waste time. Just click on the screen.